Day and night. Outside the gate he stood. When he needed to rest, he would lay down. When he needed to eat, he would go around the corner and get a bite from the local market. But he wouldn't be away long. In no time at all, he would be back in his familiar spot, standing, just staring at the front gate of the presidential palace. He had an umbrella for the rain and a jacket for the wind. He was waiting for a revolution. He would wait his entire life if he needed to. When a guard would come out and ask him to leave, he would smile at him, nod politely, and say,
"This patch of ground suits me just fine."
The guards would usually stand there flat-footed, not really knowing what to do to this man who did nothing wrong. In fact, he did nothing at all. He just stood there and waited. One day, his neighbor, who had just come from the market, was walking home through the square when she saw him there, just standing.
What's going on with you? I haven't seen you around much lately.
I've been busy.
Doing what?
Standing.
Why?
I'm waiting.
For what?
The revolution.
Revolution? Are you crazy? You can't talk like that. You might get in trouble.
Why should I get in trouble for talking?
People get in trouble for talking all the time. And besides, you just don't talk about the R word. Especially not in front of that gate.
Don't they like words that start with R's?
Not that word.
Well, I don't see why not. Cars have revolutions, industry has revolutions, the earth has revolutions, so why can't we have a revolution?
Me wouldn't like it.
Who, him? I'm sure that's not true. He certainly liked the word revolution 30 years ago when he was standing right about here.
The he that they were referring to was Antoine, affectionately known as the Beloved One, or so he called himself. True, there was no shortage of individuals inside those gates who loved him and do whatever he asked, no matter how extreme or heinous. There was only one thing the Beloved One loved more than himself: power.
Just come back home.
This patch of ground suits me just fine. I think I'll stay.
Day after day, he stood in front of the presidential palace gate and stared. When President Antoine in his bulletproof car left the gate, the man stood at attention and watched the car drive out of sight. By week 3, a group of college students began to gather in the square behind the man. They brought their lunches, spread out some blankets, and they too began to watch for the coming revolution. After an hour or so, they would leave. The man always enjoyed their company and polite conversation. One day, a new person joined the group, and he started yelling insults at the guards. "Why are you so ugly? Did Antoine feed you lemons for breakfast?" These insults greatly disturbed the man who stood in his usual spot.
Please, don't do that.
Why not? They're nothing but the symbol of a corrupt regime.
Please, don't say those things.
Why not? Don't you hate him as much as I hate him? Isn't that why you're standing there?
No, I don't hate Antoine. I try not to hate anyone.
Well, that's just stupid. How could you not hate him after what he's done to our country? He's been stealing wealth for the past 30 years, as the people, yes, the real people, have been starving to death. Do you deny it?
No, I don't deny it.
That's better. Down with Antoine! Come on, join in!
I won't.
Why not?
Because I'm waiting.
For what?
The revolution.
You can't just wait for a revolution. You have to act upon a revolution. You have to cause, prod, design, and implement a revolution.
You can do it your way if you like. I'm content to wait.
The frustrated instigator left. He would come back from time to time to argue with the man who stood in his spot. In the meantime, more college students brought their lunches, sat around the man, looked at the gate, ate their snacks, and they too began to watch for the revolution. One day, the instigator came, and I'm ashamed to say that he had been drinking far too much for the middle of the day. He staggered and yelled incoherently. He made an awful scene which greatly embarrassed the man who stood in his usual spot. Perhaps the worst part about it was that the drunken fool had brought his friends that day. They were bolder than usual. They made fun of the man who stood in his usual spot, and they taunted the guards behind the gates, who had now repositioned themselves in a much more defensive posture. The man who stood there did not like what was happening. He thought it was a good time to go and get some lunch. So he left. As he returned, the crowd had grown to watch the drunken fools and his friends.
Excuse me, would you mind if I stood back in my spot?
So there he is, the revolutionary watcher. Maybe we should call him the coward. He just stands there, but he does nothing. He never speaks of the evil deeds of Antoine. Perhaps you're one of them. Perhaps you're his brother.
You may say whatever you like. I'm content to stand here nonetheless.
Well, I've had enough of this non-action. It's time to do something. Who's with me? Yeah! The drunken fool grabbed the bottle and most likely without thinking threw it over the gate with all his strength, striking the guard right in the forehead. The guard fell hard to the ground. The crowd that had been pressing it for some time now yelled, Guards grabbed their weapons, pointed them into the mob. A group of them stormed out of the gates and fired shots overhead. Everybody cowered backwards, revealing a lone person who stood in a very familiar spot. Yes, it was the man who waited for the revolution.
Who threw that bottle? You! Did you throw that bottle?
No, sir, I did not.
Are you the leader of this crowd?
No, sir, I'm the leader of nothing. I just like to stand here.
And you, what are you doing here?
I'm just here because of him. He started this whole gathering.
So you started this crowd?
I most certainly did not. I only came here by myself to stand.
That's not true. He started this whole thing. Him and his group started this whole thing. Yeah, that's right. I've heard people in his group say things like, "Down with Antoine."
Is this true?
They say it all the time.
Is this true?
I have no group. I just have a spot of ground I like to stand on.
Then what are all these people doing here?
I'm afraid I can only answer for myself. You'll have to ask them.
And what are you doing here?
I'm waiting.
For what?
The revolution.
You're a traitor! You'll pay dearly for this.
For what? I have done nothing wrong.
Threats against the ruler, unlawful assembly, assault on the presidential guard.
I have made no threats. I've only came here by myself to stand, and I most certainly would never assault anyone. I have no enemies.
That's not true. He threw the bottle. He and his group threw the bottle. Yeah. And they've been talking about revolution for weeks. At this point, the guards grabbed the man and violently pushed him up against the wall, which he had been staring at for weeks.
We'll teach everyone a lesson here.
The guards pointed their guns at the man's head, and before he could utter another word, the rifles shot out like thunderclaps, and the man fell to the ground, dead. Silence spread throughout the square, but no one scattered or ran. Whispers could be heard, passing from person to person. Phones snapped pictures, texts were being written. The crowd pressed thick against each other. The college students stepped out, unable to take it anymore.
This man did nothing. He did nothing wrong. He cursed no one. He just stood his ground and waited for change. Because he knew it would come. Because we are the change. We are the power. We are the nation. He did not deserve this.
Within minutes, the crowd had overcome the guards and stormed the gates. They tore through the palace, searching for Antoine and When the top army general was informed of the action, he did nothing to stop them and only stated, "Finally, it has come." The people found Antoine and put him on trial by the people. He was found guilty and executed for crimes against the nation. When the news got out, people danced in the streets and knocked loose bricks from the palace wall for souvenirs. People danced in the streets, neighbors kissed each other, and wine flowed freely as they toasted their freedom. No one had ever remembered such a joyous day. As the celebrations continued, 4 college students gathered about 30 meters away from the former gate. They sat down amongst the rollicking crowd and placed a candle in their midst. They bowed their heads in silence at the spot where the man had stood and waited for the revolution.